As a consequence of an increase in military power, an even greater number of soldiers are required to maintain the same level of service. This makes it more difficult for other countries to launch. Since a very long time ago, Russia has been devoting a significant amount of effort toward the goal of enhancing the credibility of its armed forces. Putin has stated numerous times in his speeches that the Russian army is the most powerful in the world. In addition, the Russian army had a total of 1,014,000 active soldiers, as well as 2 million reserve soldiers across. According to these statistics, the Russian army was ranked as the second largest army in the world when compared to the number of soldiers that it had. Marshall also boasted about having very potent tanks in his arsenal. The entire world was put in danger by the Russian army, which routinely conducted training exercises. However, it turned out that the Russian army was not very successful when it came to military opera. The most recent reports from the front line demonstrated once again that despite having experienced Russian soldiers, there were major accidents due to a lack of training on the part of Russian soldiers. Everyone was taken aback by the videos that were taken on the battlefield. Let's take a look at the current situation in the Russian armed forces. A TP News expert investigates every aspect of the war and provides their findings. You are going to receive exclusive information that will not be available anywhere else. You can help support independent journalism by clicking the Super Thanks button that's located below the video. Let's continue our discussion about the most recent events that have taken place on the battlefield, if you have already done. In the Russian city of Kursk, which is located on the border with Ukraine, there are thousands of Russian troops stationed there. These soldiers complete their final training in this area before being deployed to the front lines of the conflict. All Russian. When soldiers arrive in Kursk, they start to hear the sounds of missiles at the front, which causes them to experience a great deal of fear. This is because when they arrive in this region, they start to hear the sounds of missile. The Russian soldiers are attempting to hit their objectives by aiming in this general direction. However, soldiers who do not receive adequate training struggle to hit their targets accurately. The anxiety that the Russian soldiers are feeling causes them to make mistakes on a consistent basis. In the end, Russian soldiers lit gusto improperly, which was a major mistake on there. The soldiers started a fire in close proximity to the ammunition they were storing. As a result of the intensity of the fire, the people they were planning to cook on this fire, using large cauldrons of RDO, caused the cauldrons to explode as a direct consequence of the fire. The blade spread to the ammunition storage, FA. The initial investigation has revealed that this explosion resulted in the deaths of at least 6 Russian soldiers. According to reports, 15 Russian soldiers sustained wounds. In addition, the ammunition depot reported a fire. There is a lack of clarity regarding the precise quantity of ammunition that was stored in the warehouse. Following the explosion, the Russian fire brigade was dispatched to the Russian press was under the impression that an act of violence had caused this explosion. This was the very first piece of news to be published in the media. Fear became even more prevalent among the Russian soldiers. As a result of this, the Russian people's anger was further fueled by the news that the war had spread onto Russian citizens took to social media to voice their opinion that the ongoing conflict needs to be resolved as quickly as humanly possible. However, it wasn't long before the truth was revealed, although it was clear to everyone that Russian soldiers were to blame for the explosion. This only served to infuriate the Russian population even further. The lack of adequate security measures and the deployment of inexperienced soldiers infuriated the people who took to social media to express their outrage. The Russians' anger has been further fueled by the reports coming from the front lines. In recent days, there has been an increase in the level of intensity of the fighting in the trenches, particularly in the trenches and the backward region. There are now head-on collisions taking. There are fewer than 20 meters separating Russian and Ukrainian troops currently on the front lines. The clashes between the two armies are taking place at a very close range. On the other hand, the Russian army is participating in very fruitless clashes with India. It was observed that the machine gun had melted according to a report that was published in the Russian press today. As soon as a bullet is fired from any, the barrel of the gun begins to heat up when multiple bullets are fired in quick succession. The barrels of the guns become as hot as iron. Because of this, soldiers frequently switch weapons or wait a short while between rounds of fire. However, the Russian soldiers have a significant lack of battlefield experience. When they sold the Ukrainian soldiers to the Russian soldiers became panicked and open. The soldiers who took control of the machine guns used up hundreds of rounds of ammunition over the course of their shift. While this was going on, the Ukrainian soldiers were seen sitting still in their trenches. After some time, the barrels of the machine guns and other weapons used by the Russian army began to melt, rendering the weapons useless. At this precise moment, Ukrainian soldiers emerged from the trenches they had been hiding in and began firing their weapons. This operation served as the most compelling evidence that the Russian soldiers lacked both experience and courage on the battlefield. These are not the only examples of the incompetence displayed by the Russian army. This list is not exhaustive. Another video taken from the trenches embankment has received millions of views since it was uploaded to social. The peculiar maneuvers that the Russian soldiers were seen performing in the video of the battle that was recorded by the Ukrainian soldiers drew a lot of attention. Strong strategy is something that successful soldiers in the Ukrainian army employ. The Russian soldiers, on the other hand, emerged from the trenches in a manner that is completely undisciplined. The Russian soldiers' attempts to target the trenches were unsuccess. There was not a single grenade that was powerful enough to reach the trenches. The Russian soldiers were made fun of by the Ukrainian troops. During the course of this conflict, everyone's attention is drawn to the brave and unruffled demeanor that the Ukrainian soldiers are displaying. The Russian military is characterized by a high level of anxiety. The fear that the soldiers feel toward one another is not the only issue the Russian army face. In addition, there is a significant crisis in management. The inability of Russian commanders to coordinate their efforts has reached an unprecedented level of dysfunction. It would appear that the Russian military suffers from a severe lack of military discipline. Because of this, the plans that the Russian army has been working on are in a constant state of disarray. A good number of Russian soldiers are sick of them. Today, Russian soldiers created a video in which they discussed the difficulties they are currently facing. The 504th Tank Regiment has had enough of the issues that have persisted for a long time. This regiment was assigned to receive training in the Omsk region of Russia. However, once the training was finished, the regiment was forgotten about. These soldiers lacked proper training, but were ordered back onto the field. 1 month later, however, the soldiers still lacked the skills necessary to operate a tank. They made several attempts to explain the situation to their superiors, but nobody paid any attention to them. According to the soldier, this unit is never stationed in the same place for very long and does not fall fully under the command of any one commander. Due to the nature of this situ, we have absolutely no way of getting in touch with our command. The only officer that is still with us is the chief of artillery, but he has told us that he is not your commander and that we do not know who our commander is at this time and date. We had a conversation with a Russian commander who informed us that our unit had been disbanded, but that we are not permitted to go back to our. The Russian soldiers were left in a state of limbo for a considerable amount of time. However, the issue has not been resolved and the soldiers continue to describe their peculiar situation by stating, "We were told that we are now a part of the Army of the Donetsk People's Republic, having been transferred from the 504th Regiment after it was dissolved. After retraining as infantrymen, Borden went to several shooting. But when it came time to reload their weapons, they asked for money. In light of this development, it became clear that our status as soldiers in this setting had been compromised. We desired to go back to our homes, but we were not allowed to do so. Under any circumstances, we have been held here against our will, and there is nothing that we can do about it." During the course of the conversation, the Russian soldiers displayed a great deal of Even Russian soldiers are fed up with the mistakes that are being made by the Russian army because those mistakes are so egregious. The Russian military personnel are very aggravated. The soldiers in the video stressed multiple times that they are not alone and that there are many other soldiers in the same predicament as them. These issues, which are faced by Russian military personnel, are consistently brought up for discussion in this information battle has done significant damage to Putin's reputation. It has recently come to the attention of analysts from all over the world that reports are being compiled that detail how feeble the Russian armed forces really are. There is no nation that is afraid of not any more Russian. The Russian Federation is currently going through a divorce in previous. Every poor video that is captured from the front line further undermines the credibility of the Russian army. Putin has stated that the invasion of Ukraine will secure the entire world while also strengthening his authority. On the other hand, the Russian army was completely disorganized as a result of the historically significant defense put up by the Ukrainian army because of the decision to send Midwich to the front. The reputation of the Russian army suffered severely. The nightmare has come true for Putin. Do you believe that these crises are occurring in Russian Farmville story to a close? What are your thoughts on the inexperience of the Russian soldiers? Who, in your opinion, is to blame for the current state of affairs in the Russian armed forces? Do you believe it is possible for Russia to rebuild its reputation? How? When do you anticipate that this procedure will be completed? Make sure not to forget to share your thoughts and feelings with all of us for further updates. See here, the ATP News YouTube channel owns these videos and all of their associated intellectual property. We do not rely on any other social media aside from Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Our usernames can be found at appnews.com public. We take legal action against every website and channel that utilizes it without our authorization. Defense and offense are both vitally important aspects of waging war. Both of these operations have been very successful for the Ukrainian army. Recent events have the potential to completely alter the way the war will be fought. The Ukrainian military has been victorious and decisive. To get a better grasp on what transpired during the war, let's take a closer look at the conflict. The level of tension in the Kremlin skyrocketed after the significant advance made by the Ukrainian army. Putin's ire was fueled by his country's subsequent military setback. Putin issued orders to his commanders and made it a demand that the Russian army go on the offensive as quickly as possible after. Russia made several attempts to attack in different areas. The Luhansk region has seen a concentration of tank units from the Russian ground. Army artillery units that had been mobilized and put into position were placed directly behind the tanks in this region. By advancing in this manner, the Russian soldiers intended to seize control of a large number of towns. The Russian commanders who planned this attack had a straightforward goal in mind. When they began their preparations, the expectation was that Ukrainian soldiers who saw a large number of tanks advancing would drop their weapons and flee from many areas. The objective of the Russian army was to reoccupy as many towns as possible using this strategy in Russia. Media organizations with close ties to the government would provide extensive coverage of these. It was hoped that by doing so, great propaganda would be produced for the Russian people. The Russian people's perspective on the Ukrainian army began to shift as a direct result of their recent victories. The general populace of Russia began to have the notion that the Ukrainian army would quickly emerge victorious in this conflict. This is causing a decrease in support for Putin, and Putin required a fresh victory for his propaganda. But the Ukrainian army was able to stop Putin's parents from achieving their goals. Despite Russia's best efforts, the Ukrainian armed forces put up an impressive fight against the invasion. The Russian tanks came under fire from a barrage of missiles fired by the Ukrainian military. The unexpected assault stunned the Russian armies. The Russian tanks and infantry attempted to make a U-turn. The Russian army, however, was unable to coordinate their withdrawal, and engagement took place between their artillery and the soldiers who were riding in the tanks. During this time, Ukrainian missiles began to target Russian tanks. It is estimated that a total of 16 Russian tanks were destroyed as a result of these operations. A statement issued by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense claims that 820 Russian soldiers have been killed in the past day while serving in the Russian army. The total number of Russian soldiers who have lost their lives while serving in the Russian army is 143,680. The Russian army's plan for this operation was to win a victory, but instead they were dealt a devastating loss. The AN army is continuing to mount a very successful resistance against the Russian assault. This is creating an awkward circumstance for Putin's political career. In Russia, this day saw the publication of a very significant report. The findings of this report have sparked widespread debate in many parts of the Russian military operation in Ukraine is being closely monitored by the British government. The Ministry of Defense has been putting out reports and offering forecasts, both of which are critical to this point. A good number of these forecasts have come to pass. This is the reason why people all over the world follow these reports with a great deal of interest. According to a report that was recently published by the British Ministry of Defense, Putin is facing challenging times in Russia as a direct result of the negative direction the war is taking. The first year of the conflict is almost at an end, and Russia has accomplished almost nothing so far. The people of Russia are taking action in response to the current situation. Every day in Russia sees a new low for Vladimir Putin when it comes to public opinion. On the other hand, a significant number of senior officers in the Russian armed forces do not get along with Putin. Putin is being held responsible for this loss by the commanders. When it comes to making strategic decisions, Putin and senior commanders routinely find themselves on opposite sides of. There are rumors circulating that a military coup in Russia could take place if these disagreements continue to grow to a greater degree. It is believed that Vladimir Putin is very worried about this. The statement that was issued by the British Ministry of Defense also discusses this matter in some capacity. The following statement can be found within the report: if Russia's spring offensive does not produce any, the intentions among the Russian leadership are likely to rise. Everyone will have a clearer picture of Putin's loss by the time the first year of the war is over. In addition, preparations are being made by the army of the Ukraine. The Ukrainian armed forces are getting ready to launch a significant operation. This operation's location is being kept completely under. In recent days, Ukrainian President Zelensky has been meeting with the heads of state from other NATO member states at an increasing rate. These meetings, it has been asserted in the Ukrainian press, are of critical significance for the procurement of new arms for the Ukrainian armed forces. According to reports, the talks have been very productive. It is anticipated that the Ukrainian armed forces will soon receive new weapons. There was an unexpected gathering that took place in Ukraine today. Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, made a spur-of-the-moment decision to travel to Kiev. The meeting took place in Kiev, where Biden also took a tour of the city. Everyone was caught off guard by Biden's rash decision. It is speculated that Joe Biden attended this event and participated in a clandestine meeting with signs. The Ukrainian press reports that preparations for a new operation were a topic of discussion. During these meetings, Biden was provided with all of the information that was necessary by Zelensky. Biden is a significant backer of Ukraine's efforts to end the war as quickly as possible. Following the visit that we had today, some fresh statements regarding this matter were provided. Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, has stated that the United States will announce new sanctions against Russia on the anniversary of the beginning of the war. The Kremlin has been thrown into complete disarray. As a result of this statement, the sanctions that Western nations have placed on Russia have made the country's current situation extremely precarious. The situation in Russia's economy continues to deteriorate. In Russia, inflation rates continue to climb steadily higher. As a result of the continued decline of the Russian economy, the nation is on the verge of going bankrupt. The current state of affairs is making it more difficult for Russia to wage war. The Russian military lacks the financial resources necessary to purchase new ammunition at this. However, the army's ammunition stocks are almost depleted because they are relying on outdated weapons and a restricted supply of ammunition. During this conflict, the Russian army is facing significant challenges on the battlefield. The Ukrainian military is outfitted with the most cutting-edge weaponry. Ukraine is receiving some of the most cutting-edge weaponry in the world from NATO member. After Joe Biden's trip to Kiev, the White House issued a fresh statement regarding the situation. Officials from the White House have reported that Vice President Joe Biden will be making an announcement regarding a new military support package that will be valued at $500 million and will include additional ammunition for the high-mobility artillery rocket. It is anticipated that the Ukrainian armed forces will become significantly more powerful as a result of this new support package. The Ukrainian armed forces are preparing to launch a fresh operation using their recently acquired arsenal and other cutting-edge military technology. Everyone is currently waiting for the big operation that the Ukrainian army will be conducting. The war might be completely won as a direct result of this significant operation. On the other hand, the Russian soldiers' morale has been affected negatively. As a result of the news regarding this operation, the Russian soldiers are putting pressure on their commanders to pull back. According to the assertions of a number of knowledgeable individuals, the Russian military might pull out of a number of regions in the very near future. What are your thoughts on the historic resistance that was put up by the Ukrainian? What kind of an impact do you think Joe Biden's trip to Ukraine will have on the ongoing conflict? What are your thoughts on the military operation being carried out by the Ukrainian army against Russia? Do you believe that the large operation being conducted by the Ukrainian army will successfully bring an end to this conflict? Do you believe that the assistance that countries in the West are providing to Ukraine is sufficient? Please share your thoughts and ideas with. Stay tuned for further updates by following us. The App News channel on YouTube is home to Right Studies videos in their entirety. You can find out our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook usernames by visiting appnews.com. We do not rely on any other social media publications. We will pursue legal action against any websites or channels that use it without our permission. The war between Russia and Ukraine rages on despite diplomatic efforts, international assistance, and economic sanctions, all of which play a significant part in determining how the conflict will ultimately play out. The fact that Vice President Joe Biden of the United States traveled to Kiev just 4 days before the anniversary of the war is another very significant event in this. While Zelensky and his invited guests were gathering in Kiev, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continued in all its brutality to the point where upon Biden's arrival in Kiev, sirens could be heard throughout the entirety of the Ukraine. The region known as Bakhmut is currently one of the front lines in the ongoing war. The day before yesterday, there were violent confrontations in Bakhmut and the areas surrounding. The Russian invaders' position came under attack from Ukrainian military forces. Several Russian warplanes were brought down by enemy fire. Let's get together and discuss the latest developments on the battlefield and in diplomatic circles. As a member of the ATP News family, we are committed to keeping you updated on the latest information regarding the conflict in Russia. You can show your support for us by clicking the Super Thanks button on our website. This will keep our work uninterrupted. Do you believe the Putin army has not stopped being a nightmare for Russian invaders? The incompetence of the Russian army and the inexperience of the Russian soldiers is made abundantly clear whenever we examine the developments in the conflict zones. The accomplishments of the Ukrainian armed forces continue to get. The Ukrainian military recently launched an assault on the positions held by Russian invaders in the vicinity of the city of Bakhmut. In the Donetsk Oblast, tanks from the Ukrainian army attacked the positions held by the invaders to the south of Ivansk and to the west of Bakhmut. Drone cameras were used to capture footage of the Ukrainian Army's 5th Assault Regiment, carrying out a mission success. The video makes it abundantly clear that the tanks belonging to the Ukrainian army are capable of deftly navigating obstacles and firing with pinpoint accuracy. The search for invaders in Beachmont being conducted by the Ukrainian army is not confined to this particular operation. Soldiers from the Wagner Group stationed in Bakhmut were also caught off guard by the surprise assault launched by the Ukrainian 3rd Assault Brig. Mortars operating in a snowy region in Badmouth are the ones responsible for carrying out this attack. Drones operated by the Ukrainian government were tasked with following the Wagner Group soldiers while they engaged in open target operations. The members of the 3rd Assault Brigade held off on detonating their explosives against the Wagner Group until the time was just right. Infantrymen armed with mortar. The mortars began firing as soon as the invaders had gathered together in one area, while others attempted to get away. Many of the occupants ended up dying there and then. However, by the time the second and third shots were fired, every single occupant that was on the target had been eliminated. However, the Ukrainian armed forces did announce that enemy troops in positions in the backward area were hit by these attacks, but they did not provide any additional information about them. The announcement that any aircraft had been destroyed by Defense Forces Aviation was made by the General Staff in a statement. The following is a statement that was released by the General Staff of during the course of a single day, our defense was successful in bringing down an enemy Su-25 aircraft, as well as 10 drones and a kamikaze drone called Lancet 3. In this statement, the Ukrainian military offered no specifics or further information. On the other hand, it is speculated that the invading aircraft were brought down in the Bakhmut region due to the fact that Bakhmut has been the pivotal location of the conflict for the past few weeks. In order for Putin to achieve the goals he has set for himself, Bakhmut must be taken. But despite the deployment of thousands of additional troops and dozens of new attacks in the region, Putin continues to be unsuccessful. A new video that was circulated on social media brought the Russian troops' failure to the attention of the force. Over 2 million different people have watched this video so far. The video depicts Russian invaders and Ukrainian soldiers engaging in a fierce firefight with each other. The footage, which is believed to have been recorded by a camera hidden inside the helmet of a Ukrainian soldier, depicts viewers reacting with excitement as they watch it. 2 Ukrainian soldiers were ambushed by Russian troops while they were in the T. 2 Ukrainian soldiers are able to drive back the invaders, who are estimated to number around 10 individuals. In addition to that, only one of these soldiers engages in combat with the intruders. The Ukrainian soldier initially opens fire with a bazooka on the territory that is being invaded by the Russian troops. After that, he uses a machine gun to start shooting at the Russian. The soldier also receives magazines and other essential supplies from his other friend. The soldier who is engaged in combat with the Russian invaders is also seen throwing grenades at frequent intervals. A Russian soldier can be seen approaching the trench at approximately the halfway point of a video that is longer than 5 minutes. This invader is severely injured or killed almost instantly by the Ukrainian soldier. The only sound that can be heard during the remainder of the conflict is the gunfire coming from the Russian invaders. A single Ukrainian soldier was able to successfully repel an approximately 10-person Russian unit. This video provides further evidence that the Russian soldiers are inexperienced while simultaneously demonstrating the bravery and accomplishment of the Ukrainian soldier. A surprising turn of events took place in Kyiv at the same time that intense fighting continued on the front. On Monday, Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, made a trip to Kyiv. Before this, there had been no announcement made. This visit from Biden came as a complete shock to the rest of the world. So what does Vice President Biden's trip to Kyiv sign? During this visit, what topics did the focus primarily remain on? Let's look at this together. United States, it's important that you do. Biden wrote the following tweet to announce his arrival in Kyiv as the anniversary of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine was drawing near. Biden's arrival in Kyiv was announced via "Today I'm in Kyiv to meet with President Zelensky and reaffirm our unwavering commitment to Ukraine's democracy, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. I'll be here until tomorrow." The purpose of Vice President Biden's trip to Kyiv for days before the anniversary of the start of the war was to deliver a message to Russian President Vladimir Putin during his witness. The message that Vice President Biden conveyed was that he is on the side of Ukraine and that Putin will not get what he wants. Following his private discussion with Zelensky, Biden may issue a statement to the press. In this statement, details about the assistance programs that will be offered to the Ukrainian government were discussed. Since the beginning of the conflict, the United States has been a significant source of assistance for Ukraine, and officials there have confirmed that this assistance will continue. The following is what Vice President Biden said in his statement about the aid that has been provided. Up until this point, we have deployed nearly 700 tanks, thousands of armored vehicles, over 2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, 1,000 artillery systems, and more than 50 advanced missile systems and air defense systems, together with countries that are our partner. The President of the United States also discussed the components of the recently announced aid package. The effectiveness of the Ukrainian armed forces will significantly improve as a result of the delivery of this assistance package. Ammunition for him, ours, missile systems, howitzer artillery, air surveillance radars, and FGM-148 Javelin anti-tank rocket systems will be included in the assistance package provided by the United States. This week should also see the implementation of additional sanctions that the United States government plans to impose on Russia. It was announced that Japan would also help Ukraine on the same day that Vice President Biden visited Kai. At a conference held in Tokyo, the Japanese Prime Minister Fuokai made the announcement that Japan will provide financial assistance to Ukraine in the amount of $5.5 billion. He stated that this assistance will be used for the reconstruction of infrastructure in the Ukraine that had been destroyed by Russian invaders. As a result of receiving aid on multiple fronts, including military, social, and humanitarian, the Ukrainian armed forces are steadily gaining strength. Sanctions are causing a reduction in the size of the Russian military. As a result of earlier sanctions, most Western and European countries have completely stopped doing business with Russia. The economic might of the nation has been diminished as a result of this situ. The Russian people are unable to take the severe economic conditions any longer. The number of people taking to the streets to demonstrate against the occupation is growing. Putin is being pressured from every angle. One can't help but wonder how Vladimir Putin will make up for these defeats. What kind of ideas do you have? How much longer will Putin be able to keep fighting with inexperienced soldiers and people who are opposed to the occupation of their